and welcome to the channel. Welcome to The Conservative Poet with me, Amanya. Today, friends, we are talking about, there's a conversation going on Jubilee in reference to transgender people and women. And so the conversation is happening, one versus the other. A lot of questions are being posed in reference to transgenders in the woman's space, transgenders in the woman's sports, if transgender men are really women, can they, all of these things. That's the conversation happening. And so we're going to cover that video today. Thank you guys. If you are interested in watching and seeing that video, then stay tuned. And again, thank you for watching, sharing, and subscribing. So this video came out a couple of weeks ago. I've seen, coverage of it from a couple of other people. And I was like, you know what? I think this will be a good video to watch and have a conversation about all of this. So this video is about transgenders, men who believe that they are women and they are in the women's space. And of course, they're having surgeries and all of these things to make themselves look like women, but they really are not women. They believe it in their minds, but they're not women. And they're having this conversation with conservative women, real women, and they call them cis women. And the conversation, I believe at some point, the real women says, we're not cis anything, we're women. We're not anything different. There's no additions to women. We're just women. That's all. That's who and what we are. And so I really wanted to have that conversation. I really wanted to take a look at this video. So I'm going to play it, and I will be stopping in between to react and give some opinion and some thoughts as the conversation is going. So I will put the link to this in the description box where you can go and go through it yourself, without me having my 2 cents in there. All right, so we're going to play it and let's go.
Okay, so if I were a white person and I said I want to transition into a black person, and I'm redefining what blackness is to fit what I view it as, right? Would you consider that appropriation?
I consider that dodging, and I consider that comparing apples to oranges, because race and gender identity are 2 separate different things.
Step forward if you agree. The transgender movement is indoctrinating our youth.
We are seeing, especially on social media, on TikTok, you're seeing a lot of people in this community really just targeting children. And you're seeing drag shows, even in conservative states like Texas, and even just media, movies, like it seems like everything seems to be targeted.
It's everywhere, especially in the schools. I just did a video just last week or a week or so ago where I went to the school board and where they were signing in Governor Ron DeSantis's Parental Rights Act bill. And so one of the people that spoke up was the LGBT X, Y, and Z community because they didn't agree with that. And so again, the people that stood up, they're talking about, we don't want these things in the schools. We don't want drag shows. We don't want, transgenders talking to children about cutting off their parts and cutting off their breasts and taking drugs and all of these things to change them into something else. It's everywhere you look, in the movies, on TV, everywhere you look, everywhere you turn, everywhere you go, it's in your face.
At these kids, you have drag story hour for kids, and it's just really, I think, predatory in a way. And I'm not saying every trans person is doing this, but as a whole, there does seem to be a route that they're taking to get to the kids.
When you hear Blue's Clues playing in the next room, and then you hear the Gay Parade song, Blue's Clues. You're not expecting them to be talking to the children about that. It really makes you wonder, are they really coming for the children?
And I think
that doesn't make you wonder. They are coming for the children. They have come for the children. And this whole thing is in the schools. It has infested itself into the small children. This is where they're taking them. They're taking them in kindergarten, first grade, as young as they can be, start to confuse them so they can think that there's something that they're not.
I think we see in our population now the rate of young children who are identifying as transgender, non-binary is skyrocketing. And I think there's something to be said for people who are truly experiencing gender dysphoria, which we recognize exists, and those who are experiencing what is now
gender dysphoria. Well, I would argue that they need to see shrinks. They need to go and see doctors in reference to their mental state, not doctors, not surgeons, to cut off their parts. It is a mental disorder that needs to be dealt with in a mental way. And that's not what they're doing. They're saying, it's normal. It's okay. It's okay for you to cut off your parts. It's okay for you to think this way. What happened to that? What happened to giving people actual help? Actual help. These people are mental and they need help, mental help.
Going to be called, or in the future going to be called, this social contagion gender dysphoria, where they're being exposed to it on social media or in school, or mom and dad are having a conversation about it with children, and children are now starting to develop gender confusion.
Or even babies, right? People who are being born, they don't have to put the gender on the birth certificate, and they're saying, you can choose whatever you want to be. Like, that's so dangerous. And even lying to them, saying like, oh, if we put you on hormone blockers.
Ding, ding. Ding, 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 ding. The word right there is lying to them, lying to children, lying to people, lying to babies, lying. People who are already confused and they don't know what's going on, and they're having these thoughts, they're having these feelings, they're having these things, and then you're lying to them, telling them, hey, yeah, you can be a boy if you want to be a boy. You can be a girl if you want to be a girl. Whatever is between your legs, that really doesn't matter because it's what you think that's matters.
At this age, it won't do anything to your puberty. It won't affect you long term. And it's just a straight up lie. And there's like an entire Reddit thread dedicated to people who transitioned, talking about how much they hate their life now because they transitioned as a child and now they amputated off healthy body parts and are miserable.
All right. Can the disagreeer step forward?
The fact that the trans movement has got people shook has me so excited. The trans movement is not indoctrinating our youth.
Yo, look at this dude. Look at this man. What do you say? Black trans lives matter. Yo. Look at the size of this man. Look at him.
Youth are understanding who they are at a younger age.
Look
and
at
for
the
what
size
I'm
of this
hearing
one.
over here is,
Look at the size of this guy. I mean, it's abnormal. Look at the size of this man.
is a lot of what y'all were saying. I wonder would you say it to the parents? Because we need to really look at what the parents of trans youth really go through. Trans youth, instead of them enjoying their life, playing with their friends, they're up in legislation trying to fight for basic rights here. 1 in 5 transgender youth have tried to commit suicide. Why are we trying to police them?
But you're bringing it only to the parents. The question was indoctrination in general. Am I correct? And then,
But they're a part of that conversation. Someone said something about drag shows coming to schools or whatnot. The kids enjoyed it. The parents just had a problem with it. But that's their issue. It's only someone dressed in drag reading a story.
Is
that could have
drag
been
not
anybody.
blackface for women? I see it as a caricature of womanhood.
But inherently
It's
sexual as
insulting.
well.
I have to agree with you guys. I do not like the drag queen social hours. I personally, as a trans person, didn't ever go to a drag show until I was about 40. I'm not for the sexualization of kids. Why are we not letting kids be kids and bringing sex into their life so early?
I think it's predatory in general to talk about sex with children.
Yeah.
Regardless, straight sex, any kind of sex.
Who's teaching sex to third grade children? I really want to know.
Have you looked at the California curriculum for sex education? You need to.
And seeing what my children are going to have to be introduced to at such a young age, like I didn't even know what a gay person was till I was like 12. And so they're going to be having these really heavy adult conversations at a really young age just because of their exposure. And that is honestly just scary because I don't want to have those conversations. That's why I will be homeschooling my kids because I do believe.
Good for you. And a lot of moms, parents, they need to be looking at that homeschooling option because the other option just isn't good. They need to be looking at homeschool. They need to be looking at Christian schools where, no. The public school, this is the breeding ground for this nonsense. The public schools, this is why everybody, they're all for the public schools. This is why. It's because the public school has that open door where they bring in all of this nonsense. But if you homeschool your kids and if you have them in a good Christian school, you're going to avoid a lot of these problems.
I believe it is my responsibility to protect them and shield them from the outside world, which is targeting children.
The trans community and the trans movement is really shaking the course of what people think gender identity is supposed to be.
So in one sentence, you're saying that you guys are not responsible for the indoctrination that's currently happening with
Absolutely
children.
not.
And in the second sentence, you are saying we are shook by the fact that you are responsible for it.
No, you are shook at the fact that the trans movement has become what it is.
And a movement that influences people all over the world, and particularly children. And we see it in the fact that the number of young people identifying as transgender, non-binary, gender fluid, genderqueer is skyrocketing, which means that children are being exposed to these ideas, and it's certainly coming from institutions like the media, like Hollywood, like our public institutions and schools. So to say that that is not happening, or to deny that that is the reality, negates the numbers that we're seeing.
What I would say is that
Very good.
the idea that there is a single transgender movement and ideology is disingenuous, and that at its core, being transgender is about separating sex from sex roles and gender roles that are compulsory.
Do you think that children should be able to transition medically?
No.
I think
No.
it just really depends on each individual situation. They should be able to make the best medical decision for them.
I am comfortable sharing bathrooms with the other side.
Yes, I feel comfortable. Safe? That might be a different question, but comfortable? Yes, I feel comfortable.
What I think the bathroom issue opens up is an issue of predatory men taking advantage of the opening. That now they could walk into a women's bathroom or a women's locker room, as we've seen happen in instances like here in Los Angeles at We Spa. And they go into a women's space, they expose themselves to the women, and then they say, well, I'm a trans woman and you've opened up this space for me.
Well, we cannot blame trans people for that. And
Nobody's blaming you.
That's the problem right here. Because again, when you walk into the bathroom, I'm not interested in knowing what you are, what you identify as. I'm trying to use the bathroom and leave out of there. What people have tried to say is that when trans women go in the bathrooms, they're being predatory, and that is not the case. That is something we do not blame on trans women. Although you were not saying that, when we talk about predatory behavior and when we talk about like the predatory cases, none of them have been trans women. So I just want to make sure. I know she's not strictly doing that.
Well, that high school, I believe in Virginia, comes to mind, where a boy in a skirt, transgender, or identifies as allegedly, raped a young girl in the girls' bathroom. That's what she's talking about. Those dangers, those things happening to women and to girls. Another thing comes to mind. I recently heard from a school board that there was a teacher, some sort of coach or something, watching young little girls in the bathroom changing. You know, this guy is standing there. Yeah, he's got his wig on and all of that, but yet he's watching these little girls. And you know how self-conscious we girls are, especially at that age. You know, when we're 7, 6, 8, 9. You know, things is happening to us. And there's an old man in the bathroom, in the locker room, watching you, staring at you. It's sick. And we can't allow that to happen. Not in girls' locker rooms, and certainly not in bathrooms.
But because she said that, I think it's very important that I bring that out on the table and discuss that.
We have to have the conversation. Now, I'll open up the question. We know that if this legislation happens, if we move forward with this move, there are going to be men who take advantage of it. Now, I want to ask you, is your comfort as far as going to the bathroom more important than the female women that will be victimized by this?
Who said female women will be victimized by this?
They will.
They will be.
No, you're only assuming, but the reality of it is, again, when people are going in...
You can't really have a conversation with this man because he's got blinders on. You can't have a conversation with him. He is so far lost that it's insanity. Oh yeah, that's right. They're insane.
Into the restroom. When people are only going into the restroom, they're only focused on doing one or two things, and that's using the restroom.
Yeah.
But you didn't answer the question. Is your comfort more important than the female people who could be victimized by this?
Okay, so let me help her answer the question. Which one do you think I'm going to get kicked out of me in? It wasn't the women's restroom. The issue that...
So you want to go into women's restroom to protect yourself because you're in a man's bathroom and you are dressed as some sort of show, and the men aren't going to allow that? They're not going to be comfortable with you in there, so you'll just crawl into women's spaces? Well, how about they build you your own bathroom? Yeah, I think that would be a better idea. Here's bathroom for women, here's bathroom for men, and then here's bathroom for transgenders.
that you're bringing up, first of all, is already violating a whole bunch of laws. Okay? If somebody's exposing themselves in a bathroom, that's a whole different environment rather than just letting trans people in. In California, it's right now 100% legal for trans people to go use the bathroom of their choice. So I don't know what law you're talking about.
You're asking this question as if I would not stand up for...
These people throw on a wig. They sound like men. They look like men. What the hell? These people have lost their minds. And they expect everybody else in the society to go along with it.
Cis women that were in the restroom, and that's not the case. Nice dodge there. But the reality of it is, one thing I'm noticing is we're reducing a lot of these particular conversations to genitalia. And it's not about genitalia. It's about safety.
Yeah, her concern is the possibility of predation. And that's still a possibility. It doesn't matter if trans people are using the restroom or not. Sure. But what you're concerned about is that you're possibly that people feel more emboldened to put on women's clothes and go in the bathroom. But they're still violating the law all over the place if that's the purpose that they're going in for.
Yeah, so I didn't step forward because, and I know in today's age this is going to sound very radical and, but I don't agree with the whole transgender ideology. And so for me, it's encouraging something that is based in what I feel is delusion. And so I don't think that we should be encouraging that by allowing men into women's restrooms.
I think that if that's the case, that to some extent, all gender is delusion. If we're looking at historically anywhere...
This fool is snapping his fingers. What are you, in the poetry session? Fool.
Trans people are not a delusion. Let's make it very clear. We're here. We've been here for ages. We've been here since the beginning.
You have delusional thoughts in your mind. If you're a man and you think you're a woman and you go out and you do surgery and you get all of these things done and you take hormones and you do all of this craziness, yeah, you're delusional.
Beginning of time. We're in your history books. And I think it's very disingenuous to say that a whole identity is a delusion.
I believe that you feel like women. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there is an objective truth, and I don't believe in his truth, her truth, their truth, my truth. Like, there is truth, and...
Who defined that truth?
God defined that truth, and that truth is man, woman, male, female, breast, no breast, penis, vagina, male, female. That's the truth.
And like, it's already defined. And I, as a Christian, I believe God is the one who set truth.
But who defined that?
Is the truth.
Can you tell me who defined that?
God.
Living in the Bible Belt with religion taking center stage, it's hard for a lot of trans and non-binary folks like myself to really be able to express who they are. I had to really take on my gender dysphoria in private. I couldn't talk to my mom about it. I couldn't talk to my dad, my siblings, because ultimately I felt like it wasn't going to lead to anything because there wasn't a lot of education in the cis community like there is in the trans and non.
The cis community? So sick of these cis community.
Binary community. We're talking about a book that was written by man with his own bias.
Who created chromosomes?
Yeah, I'm personally not religious and I believe in science.
When we talk about chromosomes, it goes back to the conversation we were talking about earlier about being intersex.
But we're not talking about intersex. We're talking about people who were born as a male and they try to transition. The whole fact that they're trying to transition into a female in the first place shows that they aren't actually that, or else there would be no need to transition, right? So you say, okay, I feel like a woman. What is that? What does that feel like?
Yeah, how does
and how do you know?
I'm not saying I feel like a woman. I am a woman.
So then why did you transition? Why can't you just present as a man but be a woman?
I transitioned so I could be who I was. I did not feel like I was the person that I identified with when I was born. So I took the steps to align my outside body with how I feel on the inside. What makes you stand up every day and make you identify as a woman? Let me challenge you on that.
I am a woman, and I don't like being called a cis woman because I'm not a cis woman. I'm a woman. I'm not a birthing person. I'm a mother.
So get mad at the terminology, not at trans people.
It's your new terminology.
But this is what I notice a lot of cis women do. The terminology has been around for so long. Cis is a prefix. Cis means same. Instead of getting mad at trans and non-binary people for using updated terminology, get mad at Webster. You're not going along with the times and being educated on the different pronouns and the different identities.
You have to admit, some of the pronouns are kind of ridiculous. I mean, to be, with all due respect, I mean, you I'm sure you have to agree some of the pronouns that people use.
They are ridiculous. Thank you, honey. They are stupid, ridiculous, and mean. It's straight up nonsense. Thank you for having the courage to say that.
They're ridiculous. I think they're very expansive. Trans and non-binary people just want you to respect their chosen pronoun. We are not trying to force pronouns on you. Just understand that the terminology is going to continue to grow.
Yeah, you're trying to force it on us. You want me to call you a woman. You're not a woman. You want me to call you a she. You're not a she. You're a he. That's your pronoun.
Bro, if you're willing to educate yourself and understand.
While giving birth is not a woman's greatest strength, I do think that only biological women are capable of going through that process and bringing life into the world.
I need to push back on that because we're also forgetting that trans men and trans masculine people can also give birth as well. And I don't think it's fair to just set it on one group that says that just biological women have that power to just give birth.
These trans men that you're talking about are biological men? No, they're biological women. So again, only people born with a vagina is able to do this. So you can become butch if you want to and call yourself a dude, but in actuality, what you got down there is a vajayjay that can birth.
And we have to be very clear when we look at the nuances of birth.
I recognize that there are people who have different identities. There are biological women who identify as men and then go on to give birth. I would argue, however, that those people are still biological women. And I know that is something that can offend many, but that's...
So the correct term is actually cisgendered woman. Cis means same. It means that you identify with the birth that you were assigned. And so, I just really...
This person is so ridiculous.
Wish that we would kind of be a little bit more mutable to the terminology, because I think that's what really is going to open up that dialogue and that discussion.
If I may, I think the crux of the conversation kind of comes back to, are trans women women? And I think if we don't agree there, it's going to be very difficult to kind of keep the conversation going or even agree on the points that you guys are talking about, because if we don't believe that trans women are women, then the conversation kind of ends there in terms of whether they're like men can give birth or not, if that makes sense.
I'm not sure that's the case. I feel like
That makes perfect sense, honey. We can't go any further in learning about anything else when the basic of it is men are men, women are women, men can't give birth, men can't be women, women can't be men, and vice versa. That's where we are. We can't get past that. We can't go anywhere.
Good, to me, is about standing in integrity. It is about being confident in who you are. And me as a Black trans woman should not be a threat to you. And what I see from a lot of cisgender women is they're trying to deem what womanhood is supposed to look like. I have my own perspective of womanhood. We can coexist in the same world, but the reality is we get so stuck on parts. Having a vagina is not the only thing that makes you a woman. I'm sorry. It takes integrity. She has much more agility and vitality than I do. We don't know that until you actually do it.
I was saying that it has been done.
Studied, it's been done.
And it's been done. We've seen it.
But it's an assumption.
Time and time again.
But we're only going on assumption at this point. Because again,
It's not assumption when we see it. Maybe it's the news cycle that I watch, but I see it a lot. I see it quite often where they're showing trans women beating. I mean, I'm by far.
And you don't see women
biological
dominating in the men's sports, right? You don't see trans men going into men's sport and just completely dominating and wiping the field with them.
Oh,
this is what happens
that's a
when
good,
you...
That is a really, really, really great point. They're not winning. Those women who call themselves men now, if they're competing against real men, they're not winning. You're not hearing anything about them winning any kind of sports. You're not hearing that. Why? Because their bone density, their physique, their strength, even though they're taking drugs and hormones and whatever to change these things, they still don't have the kind of strength a real man does. So they couldn't go and weightlift the guy out. They couldn't do that. They couldn't outswim him. They couldn't do that. They couldn't outrun him. They couldn't do that. Why? Because they're women.
I do think that trans women have every right to compete in women's sports. When trans women are on hormones, the hormones break their body down. Having gender affirming surgery breaks down the body. And so I think we really need to be educated before we jump to a conclusion that trans women are stronger than cis women in sports.
Nobody needs to be educated on anything. Maybe you need to be educated on the male body and the female body, because you obviously don't have a clue when it comes to men and women and the physical abilities of a man when it comes to the physical abilities of a woman. Look at you. Look at your size. Look at these women. Look at these girls right here. Look at you. Obviously, you're stronger. I know you're going to argue that, but you're a man. Look at, the size of your hands, the size of your feet, man. Come on.
Hi, everybody.
I find it interesting that you assume the people who disagree with you are uneducated. And I will speak out against that. I think the research shows that trans women do happen to have a biological advantage against biological women. Even though you are taking hormones, and that does start to change your body and level things out.
Not enough.
We're talking about primarily people who have transitioned post-puberty, which means they do have male bone density, male wingspan, male hand size, feet size, lung capacity. All of these things are going against women, biological women, when trans women start to enter their spaces, their sports, and compete against them. And this is really concerning.
Why I wanted to actually ask you all, like, what has your relationship to sports been?
I don't think you have to have a direct relationship to sports to realize that women are being affected by this issue. And I do reject the idea of equity. There is no way to come about an equality of outcome, which is what equity is saying. There's a reason that women's sports are less funded and less watched than men's sports. It's because men seem to excel athletically, and they seem to press the bounds of athleticism way farther than women do. We now exist on a slippery slope. If it's female sports, is it then female locker rooms? Is it then female prisons, which we're now seeing becoming an issue here in California, where...
Yeah, women are getting pregnant, knocked up in prison where they've got transgenders. Yeah. Women in women prisons with transgenders are getting pregnant.
Biological male inmates are being put in female facilities because they identify as women. We have to discuss as a society how much we give into the feelings of wanting everybody to be accepted, and how much
Feelings. Everybody's feelings have to be accounted for. Everybody's feelings. It's their feelings. It's their feelings. It's their feelings.
we are willing to do that at the expense of biological women.
I use myself as an example. This is about how big I was in junior high school and early high school. I used to be able to walk up to a V8 engine block, pick it up off the floor, and set it on a table. And if I was in powerlifting or weightlifting, that amount of, that advantage was just unbelievable. I've been on hormones for 15 years. Did it weaken me? Absolutely. Did my bone density really hasn't changed? My muscular hasn't changed? And this is not a binary question. There's a lot of nuances involved.
I just want to ask a question for what you were saying. Can you throw out some statistics?
I don't think you need to have so there's an abundance of research. There's even trans activists who agree with exactly what I'm saying. And your hormones can change, right? And even she just spoke to the fact that her bone density did not change in going on hormones and changing these things. And we can see it in sports as we're watching them. Leah Thomas is a great example.
So if you can't throw out the statistics, we're not doing enough of the work. And let's also be clear, there are some cisgender women who produce high levels of testosterone as well. And so we really have to unpack it from all different sides here.
Can you produce statistics about the bone density of biological men and how it changes upon being on hormones and whether or not it levels out to biological women?
I actually cannot, because when I would think of those statistics, I would think it was BS, to be quite honest with you, because the reality of it is we could talk about...
When you bring it up, it's all good. We need more work to do. But when common sense people, truly thinking people, brings it up, oh no, that's BS. It's BS. No. Statistics, that's BS. Really? In the clouds, B. That's where you live, in the clouds.
Statistics and the research all day long, but it's about experience. We're going to be looking more at the experience, because again, when we look at cisgender women who produce high levels of testosterone and who have been kicked out of sports and been disqualified from teams based on something that they biologically cannot control, then what are we really talking about here?
Well, we're talking about, data and that is overwhelming. And we're talking about what is also we're capable of seeing with our human eyes, I think.
Yeah, we're talking about men and women and their physical abilities. That's what we're talking about. Women and men are built differently. Women and men have different forms, different bodies, different muscle, different strengths. That's what we're talking about here.
think it's very clear that if you compare maybe you to the rest of us, there is going to be a strength difference. There's going to be a bone density difference.
But you're just saying that you don't know until we physically do something, and just perceiving and assuming just because I look a certain way, that's not fair. Me and her we could look completely different or whatever, but she may be stronger than me.
I agree, but
she have much more agility and vitality than I do. We don't know that until you actually do it.
I'm saying it has been studied, it's been done.
And it's been done. We've seen it
but it's an assumption.
Time again.
But we're only going on assumption at this point. Because again,
it's not assumption when we see it.
Yeah, when we see it, look at that man, Leah Thomas. Whew. You see the size of that dude? That guy is like this and the girls are like this. Basketball, the guys are like this, the girls are like this. You see it.
Maybe it's the news cycle that I watch, but I see it a lot. I see it quite often where they're showing trans women beating. I mean, I'm by far.
And you don't see women dominating in the men's sports, right? You don't see trans men going into men's sport and just completely dominating and wiping the field with them.
That is an excellent point. You do not see that. You see the men going into women's sports like wrestling, the men going in there, beating women up. You see it in track, men going there, outrunning women. You see it in different sports and swimming again. But where do you find a man that calls himself a woman and become a butch setup? And where are they winning in these sports? Winning against real biological men. That's not happening. Why? Because they are still a woman. Why? They are still, their bone density, their physique, their strength, they're still a woman. Even if they're butch, even if they call themselves a dude, even if they've gotten surgeries, even if they've inserted a stick down there, they're still a woman. And they can't take on a man in the sports realm. That's why there's not a lot of talk about these, women who's turned themselves into a guy or trying to turn themselves into a guy are really beating men at real sports. Now, if that were to happen, I think that biological men would be out here doing something. They would be out here standing up. They would be out here. LeBron James, he'd be out here talking, saying a few things. But it's not happening. Why? Because men are stronger than women. Doesn't matter what you call yourself. You're still what you are. Oh, I said a lot during that recording, and I pretty much want to just sum up the video by saying that I think that we as women, our spaces are truly being violated and being invaded. And so I understand that transgenders are here and they exist and they're not going anywhere from what I'm seeing until the good Lord rings down, until the trumpets come. So I believe that they should have their own space. They should have their own bathrooms. They should have their own sports teams. They should compete against each other. They should, be in their own space. That's what I think. And this way, nobody's feelings will be hurt. They'll be amongst each other and they can live the dream together, and yeah, that's what I believe. And so I'm going to wrap up this video because it's very long. I was going to say maybe do it in 2 parts because it's going to be a very long video. But in any event, that's what I believe. I think women are being invaded, and the men doesn't seem to see it again because their sports aren't being taken over. They can handle themselves in the restroom, with a dude. It's us who can't. It's women who can't. You know, you have a big old dude. Imagine little me in the restroom. Here comes a big old dude. Oh, what am I supposed to do? Accept it? Deal with it? Hell no! I'm not going to deal with it. You shouldn't be in my space. You shouldn't be in the space. If that's how you feel, then they should create bathrooms for transgenders and put them in their own place. Since they're here and they're not going anywhere until the good Lord comes. That's it, friends. We've got so many souls to save. We've got a country to save. We've got souls to save. We really have some souls to save. Thank you guys for watching. Comment, share, like, subscribe. I'm out.